The alien medical team, made up of highly skilled doctors from the planet Xylith, were preparing for a new case. The communication had come in late that evening. A human had been transported to their station. It wasn't uncommon for humans to travel through space, but it was rare for them to seek medical help from the Xylithians. The doctors were ready, though. They had seen many strange and different species from across the galaxy, but nothing could have prepared them for the sight that awaited them. The human, who appeared to be in his mid-30s, was brought into the medical bay. His body was thin but muscular, his skin pale from long exposure to artificial light, and his short brown hair looked disheveled. But it wasn't his appearance that shocked the doctors, it was his injuries. The moment he entered the room, the Xylithian medical team froze. Their advanced scans revealed the true nature of the human's body. The human's body was full of old wounds, each telling a different story of a violent past. The team scanned further and found something truly shocking. 17 broken bones in various parts of his body, some that had clearly healed incorrectly. His ribs, his legs, even parts of his spine. All broken at different times and in different ways. Dr. Tar, the lead medical officer, was the first to speak. "How are you still alive?" he asked in his calm, analytical voice. "You should have died a long time ago. These injuries, they should have killed you." The human looked at him with a blank expression. "That's nothing," he said casually, his voice surprisingly calm. "I've had worse." The doctors exchanged confused looks. They expected pain, they expected panic. The human was simply sitting there, unbothered, as though he were discussing the weather, not his near-death experiences. It made no sense. The Xylithians had encountered many species, but none had the ability to endure such damage to their bodies without even showing signs of distress. "We need to examine you more thoroughly," Dr. Tar said, trying to keep his professional composure. He motioned for the human to lie down on the examination table. As the human complied, he continued to speak. "Your body is unlike anything we've seen before. These injuries, they're healed, but not in a way we can explain." "This happened?" The human sat still as the doctors began their scans, analyzing each broken bone. "I've had to fight a lot," the human said softly. "Sometimes you survive, sometimes you don't. It's part of life where I come from." Dr. Tar raised his brow. "You fought," he repeated, his tone almost incredulous. "And you survived all this?" The human didn't respond right away. He just stared at the ceiling as if deep in thought. After a long pause, he finally said, "Yeah, I survived. I always do." His voice was steady, almost as if he had spoken these words 1,000 times before. The alien doctors were fascinated, yet they were also deeply concerned. The scans confirmed that all of the human's injuries, no matter how serious, had healed. It didn't make sense to them. It never encountered a species that could survive such extensive physical trauma without advanced medical treatment, or at the very least, suffering greatly in the process. Dr. Tar stepped back and observed the human closely. "You say you survive, but how do you explain this?" he asked, pointing to a long scar that ran across the human's arm. The scar was old, but the bone beneath it had clearly been shattered at one point. It had healed, oddly enough, in a way that defied normal healing processes. The human looked at the scar and shrugged. "You get used to it after a while. You keep moving forward, even when everything hurts. That's what keeps me going." Dr. Tar didn't understand. The idea of enduring pain and injury without the need for healing assistance was foreign to him. To most species, any injury of this magnitude would have been fatal. Yet here this human was, sitting before him, showing no sign of pain, and claiming to have survived far worse. The medical team began discussing their findings in hushed voices. They couldn't explain it. The human was an anomaly. His body was in perfect condition, despite the damage it had clearly endured. It was as though he had mastered the art of survival in ways the Xylithians could never imagine. As the scans continued, Dr. Tar noticed something else strange. Despite the human's broken bones and scars, there was no sign of infection. No signs of severe trauma affecting his vital organs. The human had no internal damage. The only thing left was the evidence of battle history written in fractures and scars. "How long have you been like this?" Dr. Tar asked, his voice filled with awe. The human paused, thinking. "Longer than I care to remember," he finally said. "It's all part of the job." The doctors were still confused, but they couldn't deny the power of the humans. Resilience. How was it possible for someone to endure so much pain, so many injuries, and still walk away alive? It was as though their bodies weren't built to break. Dr. Tar couldn't help but feel a sense of respect for the human. They may have been the most advanced species in the galaxy, but even they could not fathom the strength this human possessed. He realized that the human wasn't just surviving, he was thriving in his own way. His mind, his spirit, his will to live had carried him through impossible odds, and that in itself was something far beyond any medical knowledge the Xylithians possessed. As the examination continued, Dr. Tar came to a realization. The human was something extraordinary, a being unlike any other. He had no idea what kind of life the human had led, but whatever it was, it had made him stronger than anything the Xylithians could have imagined. The alien medical team continued to examine the human, still in disbelief about the extent of his injuries and his ability to heal. Dr. Tar was not one to give up easily. But this case was beyond anything he had ever encountered. He had seen many species, many forms of life, but nothing compared to this human. The human, still calm and collected, sat in the examination room. His eyes wandered around the high-tech medical equipment, but he showed no sign of nervousness. His name was Jason. He had a history unlike any the Xylithians had encountered. Dr. Tar motioned to one of his assistants, a younger doctor named Dr. V, to set up a communication link. "Let's see if we can find out more about this human," he said. "We need to understand how he survived all this." Dr. V quickly brought up a holographic display, showing images of the human's previous medical records from Earth. The records were old, patched together, and incomplete. But there were enough details to paint a picture of Jason's life. It wasn't a pleasant picture. Jason's past was filled with violence, pain, and struggle. The images revealed that he had been part of many military operations on Earth. He had fought in wars, survived battles, and experienced trauma that would have broken most other species. But Jason, it seemed, was different. The more the doctors saw, the more they understood that this human was not like others. Dr. Tar leaned in, reading through the data. "This human has been in dozens of battles," he said, his voice filled with a mix of awe and disbelief. "How is this possible? The injuries, the scars, the bones all healed, all overcome." Jason didn't seem to care about the alien doctor's surprise, simply shrugged, as though it were all a part of life. "It's not about surviving the fight," he said quietly. "It's about getting back up and keeping going, no matter how bad it hurts." The human's words struck a chord with Dr. Tar. The Xylithians prided themselves on their advanced technology, their intellect, and their physical resilience. But here was a species, a single human, who had suffered unimaginable pain and still kept moving forward. Jason's story began to unfold in the medical room, as the doctors continued to go through his records. They learned that he had been injured multiple times, each injury worse than the last. In one instance, he had fallen from a great height, breaking both legs and several ribs. Yet within a few weeks, he had walked again, his body healing without intervention. In another case, he had been struck by an explosive blast which had left him with severe burns and a concussion. Still, he had pushed through, returning to duty days later. The Xylithians, experts in healing and regeneration, could only look on in stunned silence. They had never seen anything like this. No species they had encountered had ever endured such trauma and come out the other side without needing months or even years of recovery. But Jason, he was back on his feet after every injury, each one, seemingly less of a setback than the last. Dr. V, who had been silently observing, finally spoke up. "What kind of training does this human have? It's impossible for any being to heal this quickly." Jason gave a small smile. "Training, I don't know. We just learned to deal with it. Life on Earth isn't easy, but we push through." Xylithians exchanged more confused looks. For them, pushing through was never enough. They had technology to fix broken bones, heal wounds, and enhance their physical abilities. They had never considered that sheer willpower could be enough to heal a body, to overcome trauma. But here, this human had done it time and time again. As the doctors continued their research, they found even more about Jason's past. His records showed that he had been part of a special military unit, one that was sent to handle the most dangerous missions. He had fought in cities, jungles, and deserts, each environment more hostile than the last. His unit had been tasked with eliminating threats, both human and alien. And Jason had always been at the forefront. In one report, Jason had single-handedly saved a group of his comrades from an ambush, despite having been shot in the shoulder and leg. The report mentioned that Jason had continued to fight, using his remaining strength to protect his team. He had been the last one standing when help finally arrived. Jason's eyes softened as he spoke again. I didn't have a choice. My team was depending on me. You don't just leave them behind. The words struck Dr. Tar deeply. The alien doctor had always believed that survival was about strength. Strength. Intellectual strength. But Jason's strength came from somewhere else entirely. It was his will to protect others, to survive not for himself, but for those around him. Dr. V looked over at Dr. Tar, silently agreeing. This is no ordinary human. Indeed, Dr. Tar said quietly, deep in thought. This human has something we cannot understand. His strength comes from within, not from the body or technology. Jason sat back in the medical chair as if waiting for the next question. He seemed unfazed by the long silence, as if he had grown used to being the center of confusion and wonder. Finally, Dr. Tar spoke again. Jason, do you understand what we're seeing? The strength it takes to endure these injuries? The resilience? Jason nodded slowly. I've learned to push through. I don't think about the pain. I just focus on what's in front of me. Dr. Tar felt a strange sense of respect for this human. They had seen many things in their years of medical practice, but nothing had prepared them for this. Jason was not just a soldier, not just a survivor. He was something more. His body had endured countless injuries, and yet it was still intact. His spirit had endured even more, and it was still strong. The Xylithians were beginning to realize that the true power of humanity was not in their bodies, but in their minds. As the examination came to an end, Dr. Tar stood up and extended a hand to Jason. You are a mystery, human, but you are also an inspiration. Jason shook his hand, his face breaking into a grin. Thanks. I guess sometimes the greatest strength comes from just not giving. The days following Jason's initial examination were filled with questions, confusion, and astonishment for the Zillion medical team. Each time they examined his body, each time they ran a new test, the human's resilience became more and more difficult to explain. It was one thing to survive an injury, but it was another thing to heal so completely, so quickly, without any apparent signs of suffering. Dr. Tar couldn't stop thinking about Jason. His mind raced, trying to piece together the mystery of the human's body. He had consulted with other doctors on Xylith, but no one could come close to understanding how this human could endure so much pain and survive so many injuries. One morning, Dr. Ta called a meeting with his team. As they gathered in the observation room, he began to speak. We need to understand why this human is so different. It's not just the injuries or the healing process. It's his spirit, his will to survive. There must be something deeper. V, still visibly amazed by the human's endurance, raised his hand. Could it be his physiology? Perhaps his body is uniquely suited to withstand damage? Dr. Tar considered the question. Perhaps, but his bones should have splintered. His organs should have been crushed, yet there is no evidence of that. His body simply ... heals. It's as though he was built to overcome pain. The other doctors murmured in agreement. They had all been puzzled by Jason's ability to survive. It seemed as though his body had adapted to every challenge, healing, without intervention, without medical aid. It was as though he was made to fight, to endure. Dr. Tar's thoughts shifted to the question of willpower. He had observed Jason's calm demeanor in the face of trauma, his lack of fear, and his ability to push through unimaginable pain. Perhaps, Dr. Tar thought, the key wasn't just the body, but the mind. "Let's test his limits," Dr. Tar said, his voice firm. "We need to see if there is a breaking point. We need to understand if this is truly a physical phenomenon or something more." The team agreed. They decided to simulate situations where Jason would face extreme stress, both physically and mentally. It would push him to his limits. We're testing not just his body, but his resolve. Jason was called into the testing room the following day. He had already gone through numerous medical scans and procedures. But now, he was about to face a different kind of challenge. Dr. Tar stood before him, his expression serious. "Jason, we need you to help us understand something. You have endured so much, and yet you continue to heal. We're going to test your limits to see how far you can go." Jason, as always, was calm. "What do you need me to do?" "We need you to go through a series of physical tests," Dr. Tar explained. "They will be difficult, but we believe you are capable of handling them." Jason nodded. "I'll do whatever it takes." The tests began. They started with simple task lifting heavy objects, running short distances, and performing basic exercises. Jason performed each one with ease, as though they were nothing. But the doctors were watching closely, measuring his responses, noting how his muscles reacted, how his body adapted. As the tests continued, the challenges became more intense. They introduced obstacles, barriers to climb, weights to lift, pressure to endure. Jason's body seemed to take it all in stride, never slowing down, never showing signs of weakness. The doctors were stunned. This human, despite his injuries, was performing at a level beyond anything they had ever seen. He wasn't just surviving, he was thriving under extreme conditions. Finally, they decided to push Jason to the ultimate test. They placed him in a simulated environment, a place where the conditions were harsh, where the temperature was extreme, and where the air was thin. They wanted to see if his body could handle the stress of an environment designed to break even the toughest of beings. Jason entered the simulation, his face expressionless as he adjusted to the harsh conditions. He breathed slowly, carefully, and then began to move. The temperature was dropping rapidly, the air becoming harder to breathe, but still, Jason pushed forward. He climbed, he ran, he lifted, and he never once faltered. His body, despite being battered and broken, seemed to respond to the challenge. The doctors were silent, watching in awe. This was beyond anything they had imagined. Jason wasn't just a survivor, he was something else entirely. He had become more than just his physical body. He was an embodiment of perseverance, of determination. After the test was completed, Jason returned to the medical room. His body showed signs of wear, his muscles were tired, and he had sweat on his brow, but he was still standing. He sat down in front of the doctors, his expression as calm as ever. Dr. Tar walked up to him, his mind racing. "We've seen what you can do, but what is it? What drives you to keep going? How do you survive so much?" Jason looked at the alien doctor, his eyes steady and sure. "It's simple," he said. "You don't stop, no matter what. The moment you give up is the moment you lose. And that's something I refuse to do." The words hung in the air for a long moment, and Dr. Tar realized something he hadn't before. Jason wasn't just relying on his physical strength to survive. He was relying on his mind, his spirit. His will to live, to fight, to protect, had carried him through every injury, every battle, and every hardship. It was that inner strength, that relentless drive, that made him so different from any other species the Xylethians had ever encountered. In that moment, Dr. Tar understood. The human's power wasn't in his body or his technology, it was in his mind, his heart, his soul. As Jason rested, the alien doctors stood in quiet contemplation. They had come to realize that understanding humans was far more complicated than they had first thought. Humans weren't just survivors, they were fighters, and their strength came from deep within. It was a strength that no amount of technology could replicate. And for the first time, Xylethians saw humanity not as fragile beings, but as something far more powerful, a force of... Jason sat in the examination room, his body exhausted but still intact. The tests had been brutal, but he had made it through each one. He had climbed, lifted, and endured conditions that would have broken most species, yet here he was alive, breathing and unbroken. The Xylithian doctors, standing in a circle around him, were still in awe. They had pushed him to his limits, testing not just his body but his mind. And every time they thought he might falter, he proved them wrong. He hadn't just survived. He had thrived under pressure. The human strength was unlike anything they had ever seen before. Dr. Tar stepped forward, his gaze fixed on Jason. The older doctor had watched with fascination as the human performed feats that no Xylithian, nor any other species in their vast knowledge, could accomplish. His body had endured trauma beyond reason, but it wasn't just his body that stood out. It was his determination. It was his spirit. "You've proven yourself, Jason," Dr. Tar said, his voice calm yet filled with a sense of respect. "I need to know more. How do you do it? How do you keep going?" Jason, still sitting comfortably, met Dr. Tar's gaze. "It's simple," he replied, his voice steady. "You don't stop. You can't. There's always something to fight for." The alien doctors exchanged glances, some of them still unable to fully comprehend what Jason was saying. "Right? For what?" Dr. V asked, genuinely curious. "What do you fight for when your body is broken, when the pain is overwhelming?" Jason paused for a moment, his eyes looking past the doctors, as though he was thinking about something far away. "I fight for those who can't fight for themselves. I fight for the people I care about. I fight because if I stop, if I give up, then everything I've been through will have been for nothing." The alien doctors were silent. They had never heard words like these before. They had seen many different species survive, but none of them fought for others in the way Jason described. To the Xylithians, survival had always been about intellect, about adapting to the world around them and using technology to overcome challenges. But for Jason, survival was about something far deeper. It was about willpower, about pushing through. Pain and hardship for something greater than oneself. Dr. Tar looked at Jason, trying to understand the depth of what he had just said. "So, your will to survive isn't for yourself?" he asked, still processing the human's words. Jason shook his head. "Not really. Sure, I want to survive. But I also want to make sure the people around me make it too. That's what keeps me going." The room fell silent once again as the doctors absorbed Jason's response. Dr. V, who had been the most vocal in his disbelief, now looked at the human with a new sense of respect. "You're not just enduring for yourself. You're carrying the weight of others on your shoulders," he said, his tone softening. That's incredible." Jason nodded, a small smile forming on his face. "It's just the way we do things on Earth. You can't just think about yourself. You have to think about the people you care about. And that's what gives you the strength to keep going." Dr. Tar, still processing, turned to his team. "This is a revelation," he said quietly. "We've always believed that the mind and body are separate, that strength comes from our physical capabilities or from our technology. But here with this human, we are seeing something entirely different." The alien doctors nodded, understanding beginning to form in their minds. Jason wasn't just enduring physical pain. He was enduring emotional and mental strain. His will to survive wasn't about the fight itself. It was about the people he loved, the ones he was protecting, the ones he refused to let down. "Jason," Dr. Tar said, his voice soft but filled with genuine curiosity. "How do you live with this? How do you live with the constant struggle, the constant fight?" Jason's smile faded a little, and for a brief moment, the calm exterior cracked. He looked down at his hands, the same hands that had healed after countless injuries, and his voice dropped to a low whisper. "It's not easy. I've lost people. I've seen people die, and I've had to live with it. But that's why I keep going, because if I give up, if I stop fighting, then I've failed them. I can't fail them." The weight of Jason's words hung heavily in the air. The Xylithians, beings known for their intelligence and advanced medical technology, had never truly understood the strength of the human spirit until now. They had always relied on logic, on reason, and on their advanced technology to survive. But Jason's strength was something they couldn't measure with a scanner or a diagnostic tool. It was something intangible, something that came from within. Dr. Tar looked at Jason with a mixture of respect and wonder. "You don't fight for yourself," he said, his voice filled with awe. "You fight for others, and that, I believe, is the key to your strength." Jason simply nodded, his expression calm once again. "That's how it works for me." The rest of the examination was quieter. The doctors continued their tests, but there was a new understanding between them. And Jason, they no longer saw him just as a patient or a subject. They saw him as something Mara, symbol of what humanity could endure when pushed to its limits, and for the first time. Dr. Tar and his team realized that human strength wasn't just about physical capability. It was about something deeper, something far more powerful. A willingness to keep fighting, to keep surviving, and to never give up, no matter what the cost. As Jason left the medical bay, the Xylathians stood in silent respect. They had learned a valuable lesson that day, something that no amount of advanced technology or knowledge could have taught them. The strength of the human spirit was something that transcended the body, and it was something that no species could truly understand unless they experienced it first. The days passed, and Jason's time on the alien medical station had become a quiet routine. The Xylathian doctors had continued their tests, always looking for an answer to the mystery of his strength. But despite their best efforts, there was still something they didn't fully understand. They had learned about his body's resilience, about his remarkable ability to heal from injuries that would have crippled any other species. But now, the doctors were starting to realize that Jason's true strength was not just physical, it was mental. Jason had remained in the medical bay resting after the intense testing. While he was quiet, the doctors could see that his mind was always working. He wasn't someone who sat still, even when his body was exhausted. The alien doctors had become increasingly fascinated with how he pushed through everything. Dr. Tar had gathered the team again, this time for a different kind of conversation. "We've all seen what this human can do," he began. "But I think there's more to him than just his body's ability to survive. There is something else at work. Here, his spirit, his will to keep going." Dr. V, who had been one of the most skeptical of Jason's strength, now nodded thoughtfully. "It's true," he said. "His body may be resilient, but it's his mind that keeps him moving forward. I think that's what sets him apart from everything else we've seen." Dr. Tar paced for a moment, his mind working. "We've studied many species, many beings, but none of them have the kind of drive Jason has. Most creatures fight to survive, but Jason fights for something more. He fights for the people he cares about. That's why he doesn't give up." Was silent for a moment, processing this new understanding. The doctors were now realizing that the true mystery was not Jason's body, but his mind. The human had endured so much, yet he kept fighting. The reason was clear. He didn't do it for himself. He did it for others. "Do you think all humans are like this?" Dr. V asked, still amazed. Dr. Tar replied. "But I believe Jason's drive is something that many humans share. He doesn't stop because he has a purpose. His purpose is bigger than himself." The next day, the medical team decided to try one final test, something they hadn't done before. They wanted to test Jason's emotional resilience, not just his physical strength, but his ability to handle extreme mental and emotional stress. Jason was brought into the testing room again, where he saw a different setup than before. The room was dimly lit, and there was a large screen on the wall. On it, a video began to play. At first, Jason didn't understand what he was seeing. It was a recording of a group of people, his friends being attacked. He could see their faces, their terror, as they were overwhelmed by enemies. The video showed Jason's friends being injured, one by one, and then falling. Jason's heart began to race as he watched the scene unfold. It was as if he was reliving his worst nightmares. These were people he had fought with, people he had promised to protect, and now they were dying. He wanted to look away. He wanted to shut his eyes and block out the pain. But he couldn't. He had made a promise to them, a promise that he wouldn't fail them, so he kept his eyes open and watched the entire scene play out. As the video ended, Jason sat motionless, his chest rising and falling as he tried to steady his breath. He felt the weight of what he had just seen, but he didn't show it. He couldn't let the doctors see how deeply it affected him. If he did, it might mean they would understand the true reason behind his strength. Dr. Tar stepped forward, his voice soft. Jason, we know this was difficult for you, but we needed to understand something. How do you keep going after something like this? After watching your friends fall, after losing so many people? Jason's voice was steady as he spoke. It's not easy, he said, his eyes fixed on the floor. But if I give up, then they're gone for nothing. If I stop fighting, then everything they went through is pointless. So I keep going. Push through the pain, the loss, because I have to. For them. The room was silent for a moment. The Xylithian doctors could feel the weight of Jason's words. They understood now, in a way they hadn't before, that Jason wasn't just enduring physical pain. He was carrying the emotional weight of everything he had lost, and he was doing it without showing the world how much it hurt. Dr. Tar took a step closer to Jason. You don't just fight to survive, do you? He asked, his voice filled with respect. You fight because you don't want others to suffer. You carry the burden of those who can't fight anymore. Jason looked up, meeting Dr. Tar's gaze. That's right, he said quietly. I fight because I can, because they can't anymore. The alien doctors stood in quiet contemplation. They'd spent so long studying the human body, but now they realized that the true strength of humanity was something far greater than what they had imagined. It wasn't just about surviving, it was about the reasons behind survival. It was about love, sacrifice, and the will to protect others. And those things they understood were what made humans truly powerful. As Jason left the medical bay, that day the doctors watched him walk away with a new understanding of the human spirit. He wasn't just a subject of study anymore. He was a living, breathing example of what it meant to fight for something greater than oneself. And in that moment, the Xylithian doctors knew that they would never look at humanity the same way again. This part deepens the understanding of Jason's emotional strength and the weight of his willpower. The alien doctors come to a realization that Jason's power is driven by love and sacrifice, not just physical endurance. Let me know if you'd like to continue or make any changes. Ask ChatGPT. Jason had spent weeks on the Xylithian medical station. The doctors had tested his body and mind in ways he never thought possible. Each test, each challenge, had only deepened their respect for him. And with each passing day, Jason grew more tired. Not from the physical strain, but from the weight of the emotions he had carried for so long. He had shown the Xylithians what humanity was capable of, but it wasn't just his strength that they had learned to admire. It was his heart. Dr. Tar had watched Jason over the past few days, quietly observing how the human seemed to carry an invisible burden. Even when Jason wasn't speaking, the weight of his thoughts seemed to fill the room. The doctor couldn't help but wonder, how much pain could one person endure? And how much of it could be healed simply by the strength of their will? The medical team had gathered once more. This time, it wasn't for another test or experiment. It was for something different. They had seen Jason push through everything physical and emotional pain, and yet, there was still something the doctors didn't understand. They had learned that Jason's strength came from his mind, but they didn't know how deep that strength truly went. Jason, Dr. Tar began, his voice soft yet filled with respect. We've seen your ability to survive, to heal, to fight, but we want to understand more. You've shown us your physical limits, but what about your mind, your heart? What drives you to keep going? Jason looked at him, his eyes tired but still steady. He had never been one to shy away from hard questions, and this was no different. I've lost a lot, he said quietly. I've seen people die, people I loved, people I fought beside. I carry that with me every day. I carry their memories, their hopes, fight because they can't. I fight to make sure their sacrifice means something. The words hit Dr. Tar harder than he expected. He had heard of warriors before, of fighters, But there was something about Jason's words that made him realize how much of his strength came from something deeper than just survival. It wasn't about the fight itself. It was about the purpose. Behind it, Jason fought because he had to. Fought because the people he cared about couldn't. "Do you ever stop?" Dr. V asked, his voice tinged with curiosity. "Do you ever let yourself grieve? Or is it always about fighting?" Jason's eyes softened as he thought for a moment. "I do grieve," he said. "I grieve for every person I've lost." The thing about grief is it doesn't stop. It's always there, and it doesn't get easier. The only way to handle it is to keep going, to keep moving forward no matter how much it hurts, because if I stop, then the grief wins. The room was silent as the doctors absorbed Jason's words. They had never encountered a species with this level of resilience. They had seen strength before, but it was always tied to physical power, to technology. With Jason, the strength wasn't in his body. It was in his ability to move forward, to keep fighting despite everything he had lost. Dr. Tar looked at Jason, a deep respect growing in his heart. "Your resilience is beyond anything we've ever seen. But there's one thing I still don't understand. How do you keep fighting when the odds are so great? How do you keep going when it seems like everything is against you?" Jason smiled softly, though it was a smile filled with the weight of years of struggle. "It's not about the odds," he said. "It's about doing what's right. I fight because it's the right thing to do. I fight because I know that as long as I'm still standing, I can make a difference. It's about giving everything. You've got even when you don't have much left." Dr. Tar nodded slowly. He had always thought that strength came from overcoming external challenges, battling physical forces, surviving harsh environments, and using technology to overcome weaknesses. But now he saw that true strength came from within. It came from the human spirit, from the desire to protect others, to keep going no matter how hard life became. "We've studied many species," Dr. Tar said quietly, "but none of them have the strength you possess. Not like this. You fight. Not for yourself, but for others. You carry the weight of the world on your shoulders, and you keep going. That is something we cannot understand." Jason chuckled lightly, though there was no humor in his laugh. "You don't need to understand it," he said. "You just need to know that it's real. I don't do it for praise or recognition. I do it because it's the only way I know how to live." The days passed, and the Xylithian doctors continued their work. But they no longer saw Jason as just a patient or a subject to study. They saw him as a symbol of something greater, a force of nature, something that couldn't be explained with science or technology. They realized that humanity's true power was not in their bodies, but in their hearts, their spirits, and their minds. Jason had taught them something they hadn't known before. The strength of a species isn't just measured by how many battles they win or how advanced their technology is. It's measured by their ability to endure, to push through, to fight for something greater than themselves. And in that, humanity was unlike any other species the Xylithians had encountered. As Jason prepared to leave the medical station, Xylithian doctors stood together, watching him with newfound respect. He had shown them that strength wasn't just about what you could do, what it was about why you did it. Jason gave one last look to the doctors. "I don't need anything from you," he said, his voice firm. "Just remember one thing. No matter what happens, humans will always fight, and will always survive." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving the Xylithian doctors to reflect on the true nature of human strength. They would never forget the lessons they had learned from the human who had shown them what it really meant to be strong. This part emphasizes the Xylithian doctors' deepening respect for Jason and their realization that human strength comes from more than just the body. It's about heart, purpose, and the will to protect others. Let me know if you'd like to proceed with the next part or make any changes.